And we are still talking about faith, and we are now in module 2, and it's already week 4. October's just flying by. But we're gonna do a quick review, and I really have to squish this in because we don't want to cover those same scriptures over and over again, but we just need just a little review. But we learned in the beginning of the faith module that Hebrews 11:1 in the King James Version said, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So we know what faith is. Now, we also know that it's necessary to have faith to please God. It's impossible to please Him without faith. We learned that we don't need a lot of faith, but just the size of a mustard seed, but that we all start off in the same playing field as far as faith is concerned. We're all given the same measure of faith. But we also can grow our faith. And how do we grow our faith? I'm waiting. You're saying it. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And that's what you're doing. That's how you build your faith. And if you find yourself lacking in faith, you just need to get into the word of God and get some videos or CDs or whatever you need to hear to get the word in your ear, because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. We also learn that with faith, you can move mountains. You can do just about anything if you have the faith and you don't waver and you truly believe what you are believing for. That you have faith that it is going to come to pass. We learned that you need to do action, take action steps in order to complete that faith walk. You need to say it. You need to believe it, but you need to do some steps to make that happen. So last week, we talked about our friend Abraham. And even though Abraham is known as the father of faith, we learned that God told him, leave your father's house, leave your country, and go to Canaan. Abraham eventually did that, but he took a scenic route along the way. He lived with his dad. His dad's name was Terah, and Terah was an idol maker, and their whole family worshipped, including Abraham, false gods. And so God was trying to get him away from that. So what Abraham decided to do was move, and he took his dad with him. So that's not obedience when God wants you away from the idol maker and you're bringing the idol maker with you. He also brought other family members with him, and they settled in a place called Haran. Well, they were supposed to be in Canaan. So when his dad died, Abraham eventually started moving into the direction he was supposed to go, but he brought more family members with him. He brought Lot, and that caused a big hoopla in Sodom and Gomorrah, where the angels that were trying to save them, the men in the town were trying to have sex with the angels, and then later the daughters got Lot drunk, their dad, Lot, drunk to get pregnant. I mean, it was just like a big mess. Seriously, like a Jerry Springer episode. And all that stuff, even though all that went on, God was still faithful to Abraham. And he is still known as the father of faith. And the reason is, we learned in Lamentations 3:22 through 23 in the King James Version, that it is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. So we learn that sometimes when we're not faithful to God, God is still faithful to us. So thank God that his mercy is new every day. And we're grateful that his mercy was new every day for Abraham too, because Abraham is the lineage that led us to Jesus. And Abraham was the one who made the covenant with God that we still are part of today. And we see in Hebrews, we're going to read chapter 11, verse 8 through 12 in the NIV, where we see that by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith, Abraham, even though he was of past age, and Sarah herself was barren, was enabled to become a father because he considered himself faithful who made the promise. And so from this one man, and he, as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. So, we've read this part in church where it's like, oh wow, God told Abraham to do ABC, Abraham did ABC, he's faithful, the end. Well, we know now what really happened. But that's how God sees it. This is God's word. So even though we mess up all along the way, that's not how God remembers it. He remembers that Abraham was faithful. And that's how he wants us to be. We got to know that we're going to mess up. And that's okay. But you just keep going. You just keep moving forward, and you keep moving forward in faith. Okay. Today we're going to learn about someone else. And her name is Rahab. And she is also mentioned in the Hall of Faith. And up until, when I first started studying the Bible, I guess around 10 years ago, I thought Rahab was a guy. Like I would hear Rahab in the Bible and I thought Rahab was a man. No, it's not. So I don't know if any of you think that, but I did. So we are going to cover Rahab's story, and this is in Joshua chapter 2. And it's one of those long chapters, but we need to get through it. And what happened right before chapter 2 is Joshua sent out 2 spies to kind of see what's going on with the land, because that's the land that God told them to occupy. And so they sent out the spies ahead of time, which I don't know if you remember in Moses' story, he sent out 10 spies and 8 came back with a negative report and 2 came back with a good report. And Joshua was one of them. So Joshua's like, I'm not doing that. I'm only sending out 2. So he is sending out 2 spies to go check out the land, and especially Jericho. So that's kind of where we are leading up to this. But anyway, Joshua chapter 2. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the spies have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab. Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I do not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So I'm going to just pause for a second. She's not only a prostitute, she's a lying prostitute, but she also had a skill. And this skill was she knew how to hide people. She knew how to hide men. So just a little side note, God can use people who have an ability to help in his mission, even though you wouldn't think of using a prostitute for that. Like somebody who's a sinner, someone who you don't agree with, somebody who you think they can't be used by God. God can use everybody. God can use anybody. But he's using a prostitute And her men hiding skill is coming to play. So, just a little sidebar. So picking up verse 7. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. As soon as the pursuers had gone, the gate was shut. So back then, the cities had big gates. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. So she had faith in God. And these people heard about what all had happened when they were with Moses, and they were terrified. And so, if they wouldn't have gone around the mountain for 40 years, because these people, this is 40 years later, they could have just gone straight to where God told them to go, and they could have saved themselves 40 years of time. But, verse 12. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives, the men assured her. If you don't tell what we're doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in is part of the city wall. Now she had said to them, go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourself there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way. The men said to her, this oath you made us swear will not be binding on us, unless when we enter the land, you have tied the scarlet cord in the window through which you have let us down. And unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family into your house. If anyone goes outside of your house into the street, his blood will be on his own head. We will not be responsible. As for anyone who is in the house with you, his blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on him. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath you made us to swear. Agreed, she replied. Let it be as you say. So she went them away, and they departed. So she sent them away, and they departed. And she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they left, they went into the hills and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the 2 men started back. They went down out of the hills and forded the river and came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, the Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All of the people are melting in fear because of it. So Rahab was faithful. She had heard the voice of God, and she knew that she played a role in this. And part of it was to hiding the spies that were sent to find out the land. But what's interesting is that in Hebrews 11:31, by faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. So she's listed in there forever and ever in the book of Hebrews with all the faith giants. And she was a prostitute. And they make a point to say, by faith, the prostitute Rahab. But it doesn't end there. So that's what she was known as. But God used her. And let me show you how. Rahab ended up marrying Salmon, and he is from the tribe of Judah. They had a child. That child's name was Boaz. Boaz married Ruth. They had a child. His name was Obed. Obed had a child. His name was Jesse. Jesse was the grandfather of David. So you keep going down, there are 28 more generations after that between David and Jesus. So Rahab, the prostitute, was a great, however many greats, grandmother of Jesus. So don't think that you can't be used or someone else can't be used by God. He uses all of us, and we're all flawed. We all have issues. None of us are even remotely close to being perfect. But we can be used by God because He picked out His lineage. And it's because she was faithful and she did what God told her to do by faith. And she had faith steps that led her to help the people find the land. So I just found that interesting that Jesus' great-great-great-great-grandmother is in the Hall of Faith, but right next to her name is the word prostitute. So God doesn't care. He doesn't care what you've done. He doesn't care how you've messed up. It doesn't matter to Him because He forgives us for every sin. And that brings us back to Lamentations, that His mercies are new every day. So we have hope. There's hope. His mercy is new every single day. The next faith giant we're going to talk about is David. He's one of my favorites. When I get to heaven, I want a selfie with David. He's my guy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the backstory on this. Samuel was sent by God to anoint the next king, and he went to Jesse's house. And Jesse had a whole bunch of kids, and he lined them all up, and so that's kind of where we are. We're going to start at that point. And we're in 1 Samuel 16. We're going to start in verse 7. And this is when Jesse had presented one of his sons. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at our outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So Jesse thought, hey, my son, this guy, he's fit to be the next king. But God doesn't look at what the world thinks a king should look like. God doesn't look at the person's exterior. He looks at their heart. So in verse 8, then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" "They're still the youngest," Jesse answered. "He's tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent and had him brought in. He was ruddy, with fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. He is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David in power. Samuel then went to Ramah. What happened here is God chose someone based on his heart, not based on what others thought, not based on who other people thought were the most qualified. God chose someone who he knew was the most qualified. So continuing on with David, his brothers were on the battlefield, or on the line. There was a battlefield brewing below, and it was the Philistines and Goliath in particular. And he was, the Bible said 9 feet tall. Goliath was 9 feet tall. Think about that for a minute. Most houses, the ceilings are 8 feet tall. Some of the newer houses are 9 feet tall. So just in your mind, imagine a giant man as tall as a 1-story house. That is big. And also it said that he had a bronze helmet on his head and scaled armor weighing 5,000 shekels. So I looked that up, and that's 125 pounds. So just his armor alone weighed 125 pounds. He could have dropped his armor on somebody and killed them. So this was not your average guy, not your average soldier. But all of David's brothers, all the 7 that Jesse thought were qualified, were out in the battlefield. So back then, Jesse wanted to know what was going on. He wanted to make sure his sons were okay because all 7 of them were out there. So he sent David with some food for the commander and for the brothers, and just to check on them and make sure they were okay, because there were no cell phones back then. And there was no CNN to tell you how things were going on the battlefield. So he sent David out there to check on them. And that's kind of where we're going to pick up on the story, but I wanted to let you know what was going on. We're going to start in 1 Samuel chapter 17. We're going to start in verse 25 and read through 51. So now the Israelites had been saying, "Do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his father's family from taxes in Israel." That's a sweet deal. David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel?" So David's his faith is already rolling. Like he's like, okay, so what am I gonna get when I kill this guy? I wanna know what my loot is. So that's his faith actions are already starting. He's like, okay, I know I'm gonna kill him, but I wanna know what I'm gonna get. So David says, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" See, David's not scared of him. Verse 27, they repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, "This is what will be done for the man who kills him." When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, "Why have you come down here? And whom did you leave those few sheep with in the desert? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is, and you came down only to watch the battle." Okay, so his brother obviously is still reeling over the fact that he was not chosen as the next king, but that David was, and David was just a lowly sheep herder, that he just took care of the sheep and the goats. And so that's kind of coming out of the brother's mouth because that's where his heart is. And the Bible says that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So David responds, "Now what have I done?" said David. "Can't I even speak?" He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter. And the men answered him before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. So apparently they're saying, "Hey, Saul, there's this kid down here, and he's saying, I want to know what the prize is, and I can take him." So verse 32, David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth." Saul is speaking negatively over David. Now, if David would have said, "You know what? You're right. I'm just a kid. no. He's been out in the fields praising God and talking to God, and he knew what his mission was. So he did not receive the words that his brother said to him, that he had a conceited heart. He knew that wasn't true. He didn't receive that. And he also didn't receive what Saul had to say about him, because he knew that it didn't matter what Saul thought. He knew what God said about him. God said he was a king. He was a king. And so that's what's in David's heart. And that's his faith step and his action is he's speaking it, and he's about to do his action. He's about to go for it. Verse 34. But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." So he's speaking faith that he's not going to do it. He's saying the Lord who delivered me. He's saying God's going to do it. So he's not saying he's going to do it. He's saying my God is going to do it. Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened the sword over his tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I'm not used to them." So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of the shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. Okay. Saul, who obviously can't kill Goliath, he's afraid of him, but yet he's going to tell David how to do it. So isn't that how that goes? Like, people who they're putting you down, they're saying, "Oh, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it." And then when you say, "No, I can do it," then they're going to tell you how to do it. And David's like, "No, I'm good. You keep your armor that obviously didn't work for you, and you just keep that. I'm going to do it my way." So a lot of times people do that. Like, they try to put you down, and then when they find out they can't, they're going to tell you how to do it. My grandfather used to say, "I'm going to tell you how the cow ate the cabbage." What he meant by that is, I'm going to tell you how to do it. So, meanwhile, verse 41. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. So he even had his shield in front of him. He looked at David over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and so handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you're coming to me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods, small g, gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." Verse 45. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with the sword and the spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcass of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All who gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into his hands." So he's speaking it. He is speaking it. And he's got faith in those words, and he's taken his faith steps. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, guess what David did? He ran quickly toward him. So he's literally taken his faith steps. He went toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. So, what defeated Goliath wasn't necessarily the big army soldier guy, David, but it was God's word. It was God's word that went ahead of him, and it's God's word that made that possible, and it was David's faith that made that possible. There's a lot more about David, but we're going to just pause on David for now, but I just wanted to share that one story about David with you. So we're going to close this week with Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 through 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down on the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So we need to fix our eyes on Jesus. And there's a lot of turmoil going on in this world right now. And now more than ever, we need to fix our eyes on Jesus. And all this stuff is going on, and you need to just put that aside and fix your eyes on Jesus and stay in the Word and keep hearing the Word, because faith comes by hearing and hearing by the Word of God. So you keep this in front of you. You keep the Word in front of your eyes, your ears. You start to speak it out. You start to walk in those faith steps moving forward, and you're going to have a Word-filled life, and it's a much better life. So we'll see you next week, and we'll continue on the faith journey. Have a blessed day. Bye.